Greetings, Benjamin J. from BENZTRAINZ with another in a series. Well, working on this motor, so I thought I would do a quick video of pressing the wheels back on one of these Marx motors. Now this is really straightforward. The only thing you have to be careful of is make sure your wheel bearings don't move. These are just basically a friction fit. Some of them aren't a friction fit at all. They're really sloppy when they fit into the side frame. So when you're getting ready to put these wheels back on, just make sure your wheel bearing is in place. There's nothing more frustrating than starting to push a wheel on and then discovering that your wheel bearing is not in the correct position, which means you have to pull the wheel back off and do it again. So what I'm going to do is press this wheel on. Now as you see, I've got several wheels to choose from here. This is the non-geared side, so we need, of course, a non-geared wheel. So let's go with this one. First thing you want to do is see if it's a good friction fit, and it's fairly tight. So what we're going to do is press this on using a vise. Now you can use a C-clamp. The problem with the C-clamp though is you can't really get a good straight shot at that axle. If you press any place except center, you're going to bend the axle. And these axles are just mild steel, same steel as a nail, so they bend rather easily. So we're going to press this wheel on, and we're going to use a vise to do that with. So what I'm going to do is line up my push rod, and what I do is just put the stud at the very top. Of course, in this position it's actually at the very bottom, and then line up the second push rod with it. And they don't have to be exact, but you want them to be fairly close. And then you can just rotate them so they're in about the same position. And just get that wheel started. And then, let me swing this camera over. On the end of my bench, I have a vise. So you crank the vise open. As you see, take your motor, swing the push rods up out of the way, put the motor across the top of the vise so it's actually sitting on the studs, and that way you can see that they are reasonably in the same place. Let's see if I can get this a bit closer so you can see this. This is really simple to do. Focus the camera. Okay, now as you can see, you've got a lot of slop there, so make sure your studs are sitting on top of the vise. That way you're pressing directly on the center of the axle, and then just start pressing the wheel on, and then you can see how much slop you have in the motor itself. And that's probably sufficient. Let's give it one more bit tighter. There we go. So we've just pressed the wheel back on the motor. It's straightforward. It's easy to do this. It only takes a second, as you see. This is really difficult to do with this camera on a tripod right in my way. Now as you see, the studs are reasonably lined up. So we've pressed the wheel on. Now you just reinstall the front cross bar. Make sure your push rods are all the way forward, of course. Grab your crossbar, slide it into position, center it over the studs, and then twist your tabs, and you've reinstalled the wheel. So it's really, really simple to do this. Now you can use a C-clamp, like I said, but you have to modify it, because you don't want to press on the stud. And you don't want to press any place except on the center of that wheel. And you can use a drill press and just actually set this up and put a bolt or even the end of a drill. Just turn the drill around backwards so it's a stud, and then use the drill press to actually press this back on like a bearing press. Anyway, it works. It's really straightforward. It's really simple to do it, and it only takes a second. So once you have a wheel puller, you can do some major repairs on these motors in just a matter of a minute. Because once you have the wheels off, you have access to taking the E unit out, pulling the armature out, taking the contactor plate out, really gives you a great advantage in working on a Marx motor. Of course, once you have the wheels off, you've got to push them back on again. One thing you do not want to do is try to drive them on with a hammer. They have to be pressed on to do this right. Try to drive them on with a hammer and you will bend the axle, guaranteed. Anyway, a really, really simple way to do this. Like I said, just lay the motor in the vise and basically have it hanging on those studs, as you see. And that way you're pressing directly in line with the axle. It's really simple to do this. And like I said, you can gauge how much slop you have in the motor or in the axle itself by moving the entire motor. So I just want to do a quick video on this. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.